start with a scenario. It's about 6 p.m. and your dinner's almost ready, and your kind of daily battle with your 12-year-old son Daniel has just started about getting off the computer to set the table. So despite the 15-minute warning and the 5-minute warnings you've given him about ending Minecraft, he's completely lost in the game. So you go into the family room, you make eye contact with him, you do all the things you're supposed to and tell him it's time to stop. And he gets indignant. What? I've just started. It can't be over. You calmly point to the clock in the room and the timer on the desk, which is about to expire. Nope, it's been the full hour. Let's count down from 10 and turn it off. But he's having so much fun that he's not thinking about the consequences of refusing to stop. You remind him that an argument about getting off the computer means he won't earn his nightly television show after dinner. He knows you're right, but it's so hard to pull himself away. He's groaning and complaining, and you just keep counting slowly, letting him know that following the plan, you're following the plan, and he should too. So he slowly stops playing and heads into the kitchen and gathers the plates. He's unhappy, but he's cooperating. All right, so frankly, it's perplexing to adults that kids with ADHD and other adults with ADHD can't necessarily understand how time works. And why can't your son follow the agreement on his own and just act accordingly? I mean, he's in middle school, so, don't they understand about the future and, the consequences when you don't cooperate? Nope. He's still struggling because that part of his brain is actually 3 years younger than 12, which would equal 9. And we might not expect a 9-year-old to be able to get off the computer on their own and go to the table and lay out the dishes. He understands the concept of the future, but it's hard to incorporate it into everyday living. So how can we teach kids to both understand time, but also to think beyond the present moment without loading them up with anxiety? So I'd love you to put in the chat, what is the #1 time management problem that your child has? So let's start with that. Because the ADHD brain is a now, not now brain, which means it's consistently inconsistent. And many folks have very real challenges with focusing on anything other than the present moment. If the now is fun and engaging, the later can't even compete. If the now is boring and unpleasant, then the later lacks all meaning or appeal. There's not really a lot of incentive for later because it's either not perceived or it seems irrelevant. And when the now is so pleasurable and all-consuming, there really is no later. It's really out of sight and out of mind. So it's kind of that all or nothing thinking combined with this flooding of intense emotions. When the later or the now is unpleasant, they can't modulate themselves. So they can't think about the future, that what they're doing now is just time limited and it'll be over and better. Or what they're doing now is so fun, they don't want to think about the future because the future seems to pale in comparison. So let's see what some of your kids are struggling with in terms of their time management. First of all, I want to greet a couple people who've arrived. Thank you so much for coming. Let's see. Dana, I think I greeted you already. Tanya, Kia from New Zealand. Chandra, getting out of bed in the morning. I wake her and turn on the lights. She just lays there and then is shocked when it is 20 minutes later and she's running behind. I'm laughing only because this is such a familiar story. So getting out of bed in the morning is a big problem. Hi, Jennifer from California. Lisa, procrastination. Megan, getting out the door for school. Tanya, going to school on time. Monitoring how much time he's off task. Completing numerous chores in a row. It takes him forever to get dressed for school in the morning. Getting up and ready in the morning, coming back from school at the time agreed. So there's a whole lot of stuff around the morning, getting up, getting ready for school, and then somebody says something about, following agreements to come home on time, going to bed, procrastination. Hi, Kevin from Budapest. Everything is about procrastination. It's hard to start. Tanya, the worst is the tablet or the electronics. Everything, oops, excuse me. Carolina. It's lack of sense of urgency in the morning. Even after I've said we have to leave in 10 minutes, he's playing video games. He's just moving extra slow. Sky says taking Nicole, I'm not sure which is your first name, taking care of responsibilities. Erica from New Brunswick, welcome. Caroline from UK, hi. Janelle, disengaging from computer games. My son is 11-year-old. The game is Roblox, but your scenario is almost dead on my situation. Thank you, Janelle from Ontario. And Megan, let's see, I got a lot of comments here about this. Megan, welcome. Jennifer, the night routines, generally understanding time, taking 20 to 40 minutes to get dressed, washed. She has no concept of what getting ready really means. 10-minute homework can take 1 to 2 hours. Hi, Kia Ora. Starting a task they don't want to do, emptying the dishwasher really comes to mind because it has to be done so often, every 2 to 3 days. My 10 and 12-year-old girls always would rather do electronics or read. Hi, Jules from Sydney. Not playing video games, just slow. Okay, will not do homework. Okay, so these are lots and lots of stuff. So let's start with what I hear are the mornings can be difficult and we're dealing with procrastination. So let's start there, and if that does not cover what you're thinking about, please circle back in the comments because Facebook erases them. So let me say a little bit about time and time management. So both children and adults with ADHD struggle with feeling time, right? Which can make thinking about the future abstract and unreal. So right now I'm lying in bed, it's warm, I don't want to get out of bed, and 20 minutes feels like 2 minutes. Like there's no difference for me. I can't feel that difference. Time management is an executive functioning skill that actually responds very well to direct instruction, and it, learning to cope with time requires accepting your challenges and understanding that time is fluid and constantly changing. And that's very hard for kids with ADHD because they're concrete thinkers. There's really now and then there's not now. So now when you wake me up in my warm bed feels really good. The not now, which is rushing around and stress because I'm late for school, is in a completely different universe. It's not relevant to my current universe. And a lot of kids with ADHD can't even project into the future to remember that when they don't get out of bed, they're going to rush around and be stressed out in the morning. So many people with ADHD wrestle with grasping and organizing time, and really kind of trying to feel their way through the minutes and the hours of a day, and comprehend the concepts of past, present, and future. And often people who struggle with time management have the following two issues. One, either they underestimate how long something will take, avoid it until the last minute, and frantically race to finish it, or they overestimate how much time it will take and they feel overwhelmed and they don't start at all. And then that part of that or is there's the underestimation of how long something will take. There's the overestimation of their of their own abilities to do something, and then there's just the avoidance of the unpleasantness of whatever the task is. So all three of these patterns negatively affect productivity and performance and increase stress and anxiety. So when we're talking about the morning routine, we have to link the unpleasant or the have-tos to want-tos. So if, for example, your daughter who doesn't want to get out of bed wants to have might want an extra a half hour on their curfew on the weekends, or might want to be able to go into town by themselves with friends, or might want to have extra screen time to FaceTime or whatever with some buddies, or watch a movie online. all of those things can be used as incentives. So what happens, part of the problem is that because there's no real connection between the present and the not present, as I like to say. So we want to try to link them. And you know, part of how you're going to do that in the morning is to say, you know what, I'm not interested in having a battle. So if you want to have 20 minutes to lie in bed every morning, that's great. I'm going to wake you up 20 minutes earlier. Then you can have those 20 minutes, and then it's going to be time to get up at the time when I want you to get up. Because if you're waking your child at the time when you want them to get up, the chances are you're going to be late every single day, because they need that time, often because of how norepinephrine, how the amounts of norepinephrine, the lower amounts of norepinephrine in the ADHD brain affect sleep and alertness. So it's important to allow time for lounging before actually having to get up. The other thing that I think would be helpful is to have a couple different alarms in a room. Some kids don't like alarms. Some kids are willing to have you do the initial wake but need an alarm for the second one that's across the room, so they have to get up and out. Maybe you can incentivize them with earning something after school is over. So they do this thing in the morning, they earn this thing later, or maybe they can have some phone time in the car, or whatever incentives would matter to them. And that's really the conversation that we want to have before we think about anything in terms of teaching a skill. What incentives matter to your kids, and how can you set something up in terms of time management that links what's the unpleasant to the pleasant? Because if we expect our kids to feel time and understand time, and remember that yesterday and the day before and the 3 weeks before that you were arguing every morning so you weren't late to school, that's actually not going to be present in their head when they're waking up. It's just not how the ADHD brain works. So so I think, you know, ideally what you want to do is to have a conversation with them about not wanting to argue, because they don't want to be argued with, they don't want to be yelled at, and you don't want to do the yelling or the arguing. So that's common ground that you both have. And what kind of routine can you set up for that? So if people take a long time getting dressed, but they then want to play something on their phone or their computer, they don't earn that privilege until they're dressed and completely ready for school, with their backpack out, with their coat, you know, with their lunch, whatever it is. You as the parent own the rights to accessibility of technology. They don't own it. They're not paying for it for the most part, and you are. So and it's not a right, it's a privilege. So how do you want to communicate that to them so they understand, you know, how it's going to be in the morning? Do you want to do a point system? For every morning that there's no yelling and you're ready for school on time, you earn a point towards something that you desire. Maybe if you're younger kids, a new Lego set. Maybe if they're older kids, you know, going to the movies with friends that you're going to pay for, or having a sleepover with people, picking out the pizza that you're going to have for dinner, deciding what movie the family's going to watch. Whatever kinds of privileges you can create that can be motivating to kids if it matters to them. So one of the things that I think we want to think about is that and I can already see that I've lost a bunch of things that people said, is that in the morning, Carolina says there's lack of a sense of urgency even after I've said we have to leave in 10 minutes. That's because 10 minutes means wow, 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 wow. It doesn't mean anything. So obviously I really am a big fan, as you know, of the timer. And here it is. You set the time for 20 minutes, and then they can see time move. So when I was at the conference, I went to this great workshop on time management with Zara Harris, who's a ADHD coach, and she told me something that I didn't actually really ever think about in this way, and that is that time, digital time, doesn't mean anything for people. Analog clocks need to exist in most rooms for kids, and they need to learn how to read them, and for teenagers probably adults too, because it's the actual time, the minute, it's 9:55, is not that important. What matters is what's coming up that you need to get to, and what's happened in the past. So the actual time is it's like a pointer. It's like your GPS. It's like, oh, okay, it's 8:55, and we're supposed to be at school by 9, and that's not helping. But really, we want them to understand what's outside of the hands on the clock and how they can work within them. So, what in term for Carolina, I would ask, why is your son get the privilege of playing video games in the morning? Maybe he's not really capable to manage video games in the morning, and instead it might be better if you could play a game of cards, or you or he could read, or throw a basketball or something like that, and then he could earn his video time later in the day because he cooperated in the morning, or he can pick the music in the car or something like that. So let's see. Joylene says, not thinking about what's coming up in terms of events and appointments that are not specifically schoolwork, distracted with a phone, always forgetting. So working memory is, of course, a big challenge for adults and kids with ADHD. And, kids actually need a visual map. So is there a whiteboard in your kitchen? Is there a calendar with a list of activities of what happens when, or what needs to get done so you can leave the house on time? We want to lay things out in a visual way for kids with ADHD in terms of learning to manage time, because it helps them organize themselves, and it helps them see that they have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, that there's a plan in place that they can learn to apply later on for themselves when they're trying to manage their own time. Yes, they're distracted on the phone. And so if they're distracted on the phone, then A, should they have their phone before they're actually ready for school? B, is there a way that you can make it contingent? C, are there alarms and alerts that are on the phone to let them know what they have to do? Again, if you think about phones or screens as privileges that kids earn by cooperating and doing the things that they need to do, those have-tos, then you can set things up a little bit differently in your household. All right, there's a bunch of comments here. Megan, waking isn't an issue as much as the executive function of, I need to get dressed, I need to brush my teeth, I need to take my medication, I need to make sure I have my computer, water, lunch, etc. for school. Right. So where is the list of what those things are and how to do them? And do you have alarms and alerts set on whatever device they're using so that can happen? And maybe you need a couple of multiple lists, like one in the bedroom, one in the bathroom, one in the kitchen. And how old is your child? Because it is hard still, even for 14-year-olds, to move themselves along the time bandwidth to because really, if you're 14, you're more like 11 in this area. Time management is very difficult. I'm always very surprised when I work with kids and adults with ADHD who are very much on time for their appointments, because I myself struggle with time management. I always think I can do more in a given amount of time than I can actually accomplish, and so I'm constantly feeling like I'm behind. And that's probably because I set unreasonable standards or expectations for myself about what's humanly possible. But also it can be because I do, like other people, kind of put off the things that I don't really want to do. So Caroline, I'm still like this as an adult. Of course, that would make sense to me. Joylene, anything timed makes him anxious. Okay, so the thing is, if things timed make you anxious, but you're not on time yourself, you've now created a conundrum. For yourself and for your parents. The time stuff makes me anxious, but when I'm not timed, I'm late and I can't manage time. So there has to be something in the middle. And maybe it's an egg timer, maybe it's a time timer, which isn't ticking, but it's just showing you that time is moving. We have to be able to teach time as a skill. And so anxiety related to time needs to be unpacked. So what is the anxiety related to time? I don't know what that is for your son, but is it about being late? Is it about getting in trouble? Is it about the stress? Then these are all things that have solutions that you can work on together, because collaborative solutions where time is concerned are what really helps. I'm glad you've had success with a time timer. You have an analog wristwatch. Great. D, anger issues when asked to do something or change a task, get off a device, shower, do a chore, swearing. Girl 11, only at home, beautiful at school and high achiever, high masker. So one of the things that we see with a lot of kids who are neurodivergent, and sometimes with kids who aren't, is that who they present to the world is who they're becoming, and who they present to us at home is who they've been. So we see the younger, more immature version with less emotional regulation, and school sees somebody who's doing really well, who holds it together. They come home and they kind of fall apart. So when we're thinking about improving time management, we want to do one intervention at a time, because we want to actually have a success with something before we move on to the next aspect of time management we're trying to teach. Otherwise, it's going to be overwhelming and you're not going to feel successful. Kevin, we do, and she forgets to look at the boards. So when kids forget to look at the boards, it's a very, very easy intervention for you. And the statement is, please take a look at the board and follow the steps there. Take a look at the board. Are you looking at the board to follow the steps there? Because instead what they're doing is they're pivoting to you to be their prefrontal cortex, to be the part of their brain that manages time. And we want to teach them how to do that for themselves. So sometimes we can be that prefrontal cortex, but usually it just means we're going to have an argument about it. So how are we going to help them learn? And we need to expect that sometimes we still will have those arguments. So we want to redirect people to looking at the boards when they're late. Hey, you know what? Did you check the clock or your timer? Because we're running a little late. Can you look at the board and see what's next? Janelle, I use a digital timer. It doesn't always work, but I am thankful that he gets some sense of urgency, most often in the last 10 seconds. All right, well, if that works, that's okay. I'm all about doing whatever works. D, I also have ADHD, so I find myself in battles for control with her. Right. And, you know, I had battles like this with my daughter, where we would, you know, get into control issues. And I look back on it, and it was such a waste of my time and energy. And it just really kind of put in some big boulders in our relationship that I wish now that I had never done. So I would pick the key issues for you. What are the things that are most important to you where you want cooperation? And then I would ask her, what are the things where she hates you yelling at her the most, or where she wants to have more autonomy? And try to pick one of those things that you both can agree on and work on that. So she'll feel like there's less nagging or reminding, and you'll feel like there's less conflict. Lisa, you use a large poster board for lists of tasks. Kevin, so a 10-year-old is more like a 6 or 7-year-old on executive functioning, not on all skills. So this is the challenge of ADHD, right? Because and the human brain and how we develop, because our development isn't linear. So you'll make progress in one area, and you'll be a little slower in another, and then it'll switch, and then you'll be ahead in an area and not make progress in the area where you were progressing. So things change. But where your kids are struggling, the executive functioning skills that are hardest for them, they are most likely up to 3 years younger in their age for those executive functioning skills. Amy, my 17-year-old struggles to connect how his actions today impact his future goals. He has goals, but impulsive decisions prevent him from moving closer to his goals, saving money, taking certain classes. Right, and the reason that is because the adolescent brain is all about gratification. And the adolescent teen brain is doubly about gratification and satisfaction. So it's impulsive decision, something feels good in the moment, or I just am going to do this thing because this is what popped in my head. That makes sense. Things like saving money or taking certain classes and being able to project into the future are much harder for kids with ADHD. And so we really want to focus on an area that matters to him. Money may be something that matters to him more than taking classes. So how are we going to help him save money? What is a plan for that? What is a structure for that? Because he's not going to be able to create that on his own. So let's talk about some tips for teaching kids with ADHD to understand the future and, of course, by extension, the present. So we want to talk about the concept and issue of time with our kids. So identify some areas of strength around time and some challenges. Explore periods of the day when a routine helps them manage time. What are the parts of the day when time management is difficult? I'd ask them about their perceptions of the past, present, and future. Like, what is the past? You know, how far back does the past go? Sometimes it can go back years. Sometimes it might only go to yesterday. What is present time for them? Is it today? Is it yesterday, today, and tomorrow? And what is the future? Like, how far out does the future go? Because we want to understand their comprehension of past, present, and future so we can work with their ideas of time more effectively. So let's see, I have a couple comments here. Thank you, Lisa. Yep, progress is not linear. Whitney, first trimester in high school for my ADHD and he's totally flunking the trimester. I'm sorry. I wish I could help him, but he always has an excuse as to why he can't get work done. So Whitney, this is a longer conversation, but I think that part of what would happen is to get him a tutor who actually would work with him maybe a couple times a week to sit down and actually create homework time. Consider having family work time where, you know, he comes home from school or you're home from work and you know, you're at the table doing your thing and he's at the table doing his thing. And he doesn't get any privileges until he finishes his homework and you watch him press the send button. Okay, because flunking everything is serious, particularly in high school, and this means it's a cry for help. So what kind of help does he need? Does he need a strategies class in school where he does his homework supervised so he can come home and not do it? Someone I worked with once, their son said, I want to wake up at 6, I want you to give me my medication, I want to do my homework then, go to school, come home, and not have homework, and then I'll do it again the next day. And we hemmed and hawed and went back and forth. And finally, the mom said, okay, we'll try it. We'll try it for a week and see what happens. And in 1 week, he woke up every day and did that. So then we said, okay, well, we'll try it for 2 more weeks. And this was actually a plan that worked for him, for his brain, because when he came home, he was done. And he was much more willing to do stuff in the morning when he was fresher than after school. So we want to get information about that. Lee, family chores. How do I find a way for ADHD boys 12 and 10 to start and complete chores they don't want to do without rewards? I don't think you can, and I wouldn't necessarily call them rewards. I'd call them incentives. And I would make sure that the chores are broken down into doable chunks, small chunks, because a lot of time the reason kids can't get started on something is that the task seems too big. So they do a chunk, maybe they get a 5-minute break, they do another chunk, and then they're finished, something like that. Thank you for the suggestions, Attitude, Melanie. Jennifer, my daughter gets stuck in the bathroom with her nightly routine. We give her a 3-minute shower alarm, a 1-minute alarm, and an alarm, a 1-minute alarm and another alarm, and we can't get her out. So how long would she like to take a shower? I mean, I had a client once who would take showers for, like 30 minutes, which was a problem. But that part of the challenge was that when she was in the bathroom, in the shower, she would do things like, take the soap and make bubbles and put the bubbles all over the walls of the bathroom. And then like there would be water in the shower and water on the floor. So we want to come up with like how long she would like to take a shower and how long would you like her to take a shower. And if you can, try to meet a little bit in the middle so that she feels like she's getting a little extra time with that warm water and you're getting her to get out on with the agreement of that. Again, we want to go back to the concept of it's very hard for kids with ADHD when they're doing something that is pleasant to stop it. And just like it's hard to get out of bed in the morning, it's hard to get out of a warm shower into the cold air. Maybe an agreement might be you're there waiting with a towel to wrap her up really fast so she doesn't get cold. Something that would be an enticement to do this other thing. Lon asks, yes, it is recorded. Jennifer, we're working with an executive function coach. It has been fantastic. Well, that's great. I'm very happy to hear that. Good. D, what about parents that aren't parenting the exact same? Is that damaging? I'm not really a big fan of the word damaging. I think I would replace that word with confusing. It can be confusing to kids when one parent does one set of things and another parent does things another way, and they're not on the same page. And I think ultimately what you're setting up for yourself and your family is a bad cop, good cop scenario because you're not on the same page. So how can you get on the same page? What issues would bring you together? And if you're not sure, then maybe to consider some counseling to help you with that. You're welcome, Whitney. Jennifer, forever. Okay, so forever is a little bit long for a shower. Maybe you can work with her and say, okay, let's start with 10 minutes and see, excuse me. And see how 10 minutes goes and what that feels like. Because, forever for her might be 10 minutes. I would kind of play with that idea of forever. And then maybe perhaps have a bath time once a week where she can hang out in the bathtub for 20 minutes on a Saturday or Sunday where she doesn't have to be somewhere and you don't have to be somewhere. Excuse me, I have something in my throat. Okay. So let's look at the second tip. So we want to make connections from the past to the present and speculate about the future together. So you're nurturing the concept of the future by strengthening. Oh, I really do have a tickle. Excuse me. Okay. So we're going to nurture the concept of the future by strengthening a child's ability to look backwards and see previous actions and decisions that might have affected the present. Maybe at the soccer banquet tonight, your daughter won an award for most improved player and was beaming when she received it. Talk with her about her reluctance to take a chance and play a new sport on the first day of soccer and how that crystallized into this success today. By using specific markers of time, such as on the first day of school, instead of 3 months ago, you're making time real and concrete. Because 3 months ago means nothing, but the first day of school, your child will probably remember. This is very useful for the ADHD brain. Then you can imagine a future scenario similar to this one. Perhaps when it's time for spring soccer, it will be easier to sign up. So being able to link the skills or activities used in the past to what is coming up in the future or might come up in the future provides a critical sense of flow. Okay, the third tip, we want to break the future down into manageable chunks. So learning to think about the future is more digestible when it's smaller. When parents of 5th graders share their concerns about colleges for their kids, I encourage them to slow down and just focus on 5th grade. That's all a child with ADHD can handle anyway. There is the past, that could be yesterday or breakfast 8 hours ago, and there's maybe camp last summer, and then there's the present, what's happening now. This is followed by what I call the next present, something like tomorrow, the next day, or the upcoming weekend. That's tangible, that's within view for your child. Beyond that, weeks or months could have very little meaning for your child or teen. Christmas, it's coming, but it's still quite a ways away. How far it is doesn't really actually make sense to them. So this is why the pain of doing a spelling homework today isn't worth the knowledge that your child might have for the test next week. The now of the unpleasantness is all that's seen or experienced. But if doing the homework immediately means that your son might earn extra screen time later or an additional bedtime story, he could become more motivated. So let's go back to some of these comments. Kara and George. How can I help my 11-year-old son to understand that schoolwork and reading is important? He refuses to read or even attempt homework. So I don't think you can convince him that reading is important, although, in a lot of schools for 11-year-olds, they have to do some reading as part of their homework. So what might be helpful is to do that family time, that family work time where you're together doing something and he's doing something as well, so he's not feeling all alone doing his homework. He might need to chunk that homework down to do something easy to feel like he's on his way, and then do something that's a little more difficult rather than start with the hardest thing. Some kids like to start with the hardest thing because of medication issues or because they want to get it out of the way. And then, what does he earn when he finishes his homework? That's an important question to ask, because that's when he can get his want-tos. Sylvia, my daughter's in college now, excellent grades. She procrastinates a lot to complete tasks and seems moody all the time. Well, a lot of people struggle with procrastination, and part of that has to do with managing time or not understanding time. So one of the things that we want to think about is, where is the procrastination holding her up, and how can she break down some of these tasks that she is procrastinating on, so that she can do smaller pieces of them and feel like she's accomplishing things along the way. Yes, showers can be very calming for anxiety. Thanks, Dee. Rebecca, my youngest loves his round nightly baths. Sunday, tea, honey, and lemon. Oh yeah, can't get that while I'm talking to you though. I'm gonna try a timer. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Carolina. Some kind of timer, and let him come with you to pick it out. So it's something that he would like. So the 4th tip is to use your child's imagination as your aid. So when we ask kids to imagine themselves as a superhero or a few years older than their current selves, they often are able to do this. And so we might want to take a quiet moment maybe before bed or in the car, and ask them, what their superhero self or their older self might want them to know now about a current challenge. What simple actions would this superhero suggest, and what kinds of things could they do to take this advice? When you engage their imagination about themselves as older or with magical powers, they can step outside of the concerns of the present into a realm of play and creativity. So they're freed up a bit from a logical thinking or memories of failure and have space to consider things from a different perspective. This process helps both of you work collaboratively on creating effective strategies for the present and the future. I'm just going to put my downloadable in again, which summarizes some of the things I've talked about here. So how to do that. So we want to try to think, what would, let's say, your you know, your superhero is, I don't know who your kid's superhero is, but let's say it was Superman or Superwoman, and they were struggling with, you know, failing or, you know, not doing their homework and getting in trouble with their parents. What kind of advice do you think they might give you? You know, what kind of tips? Or if you think about yourself 2 years from now, you know, you're in fifth grade now, but you're in seventh grade, you're a big seventh grader. What would your seventh grader self tell your fifth grader self about how to manage homework or get up for school on time? You know, what would they say? And that's a kind of conversation that allows speculation on their part, but also allows them to move beyond the stuckness that they feel in the moment. D, what do we do about sneaking food and binge eating food? It's not healthy at all. She isn't allowed to eat snacks, just not a 16-pack. She isn't not allowed to eat snacks. Okay, so she can eat snacks, but not a 16-pack of chips in a session. Weight gain is an issue and not something I want to bring up, but I'm worried about her health. This is a very good question, Dee. I think sneaking and binging food has to do with having a, you know, a need for something or a feeling like of dissatisfaction or a lack of satisfaction in things that are going on, and feeding is a way to self-soothe. And so, you know, you might need to keep some food locked up. You might need to only buy small amounts of snack food at a time, so, you know, that she doesn't go through all of it at the same time. And, you know, to make sure that there are healthy activities for the house as well as managing the food. So she understands that being healthy is being active, is eating healthy foods, whole foods, and, you know, and stuff like that. Megan, that doesn't make sense. Listening and typing. Reference using the tablet as a reward for family work time. Okay. When my son comes home, he doesn't want to do homework. He wants to decompress. So if we wait to do the work until the time when he's ready, and me, how to use a tablet as incentive. So essentially, I would not use the tablet for decompression. I know that's not going to be very popular, but that is what I've seen has been the most effective thing. You can come home, you can decompress for 20 minutes, but you're not going to get the tablet. You can decompress another way. When your homework's done, that's when you get the tablet. And you'll get pushback and some tantruming initially, but the goal is for you to stay steady and to stick with that, because he's getting his reward, his incentive, before he does the task. And so he's not actually going to do the task. Why bother? Because there's nothing he's going to earn for it. Let's see, Diana, for reading, should I focus on reading aloud or silent reading when I'm not convinced he's actually reading the book text or skimming to answer questions? 10-year-old homeschooler. I would do a mix of reading out loud and silent reading. So that you know that he actually is doing some reading at some points and then doing some silent reading at different points, followed by questions about the passage that he was supposed to be reading. Susan, healthy snacks are available, veggies and fruits in easy to eat sizes. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. Any more questions? I'm sure you guys have some questions. We have a few more minutes. Any more questions about time, the concept of time, and the idea of past, present, and future? How we can help kids start to think a little bit about the future in ways that would relate to how they're managing time right now. So this is a good time to post your questions because I have a few more minutes to answer them. If you have questions about time management in your family, or about how to make connections to the future from what's going on now. Anybody have any comments or questions? I'm going to keep chatting until I see for another minute or so, because people might not have any. I think the thing that we really want to remember as you leave this session is that the ADHD brain is very much a now, not now brain. And that means if the now's good, that's what's focused. If the now's bad, that's the focus. Leah says, do I need to accept and lower my expectations? So I'm not sure what that comment was, because I can't get back to it, if you could repost it, that would be helpful. Megan, I haven't read the article, but how does the time timer work? Does it mark 45 minutes, for example, and then count down? Yes. So what happens is, here it is. So this is 45 minutes, so that's orange. And as it counts down, the orange disappears. So kids are actually, and adults, seeing time move. And that can be very helpful. Lower your expectations. So I don't know exactly what this question is, so I'm just going to speculate. I think you need to meet your kids where they are. So if your child struggles with time management, then meet them where they are, figure out one area of time management that's going okay, and work on that and really strengthen that, so then you can move on to an area that is more challenging. Let's see. Jennifer, thank you so much. I'm glad that's helpful to you. Thank you, Megan. Okay, it's a timer. It's not a clock. You're welcome, Sylvia. You can find the time timer if you Google it. You can find it. I think it's sold in various places. I cannot post a link to the timer because I'm on my own handling the comments and I don't have it, but I know you can get it online for sure. So again, here's a link to my downloadable. Susan says, do bits of projects that are easy while they think about the harder parts. Would that help with starting school projects? I think that's a great idea, to do small, easier parts and then think and consider the bigger things. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Are ADHD boys generally 3 years younger maturity? People with ADHD mature more slowly because of the process of myelination from the prefrontal cortex to the rest of the brain. So the brain develops from the back to the front and the inside out. And the back of the brain, the reptilian brain, the physiological brain is fully intact at birth. Otherwise, you'd have big problems. The emotional brain, the mammalian brain, is also partially intact, and then it develops over time. And then the prefrontal cortex, I mean, all these parts of the brain are there. They're just not connected. They're not fully myelinated to, which is the sheath that goes around the neuron, to other parts of the brain so that it's efficient and effective in terms of the messages it's sending and the connections it's making. So the brain is, you're born with a brain. The brain reaches its full size and weight by the age of 10, and it has about 100 billion neurons. So ADHD boys and girls, there's about a 3-year delay in maturation, and that goes all the way up through the 20s. So we see that the neurotypical brains are fully myelinated and connected around age 25, and there's up to a 3-year delay for people with ADHD. So I think there's one more comment. Thank you, Lisa. You're welcome. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next month because I'm going away, and when I come back, it'll be the holidays. So I wish you all a happy and a healthy holiday season and a wonderful new year. I'll see you in January. Bye-bye.